Welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast, episode 3, I think, for January so far. We're burning through the episodes. Today we have my good friend, Jane Frankland. She's been on the show before. Jane, it's a pleasure to have you on the show again. So for the people who didn't catch the first episode with you on it, give a brief background of who you are and kind of what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, cheers, Mike. I'm so happy to be here. My name's Jane. I've been in cybersecurity for over 25 years. I came into cybersecurity. I didn't come in from a tech background. I actually came in from a art and design background. I came into technology, into cyber, by building my own penetration testing company. So I did that in 1997, worked that business, owned it for about 13 years, sold it, then went and worked for a few companies in an executive position. And since probably about 2014, I've really been out there helping entrepreneurs to grow and scale their businesses, and then also companies to get more women into cybersecurity and remain in it, and then women to really evolve in cybersecurity so they are stronger and more resilient, and they can stay in this wonderful market for as long as they want. And in addition to all those things, I'm a judge. I judge lots of different awards all around the world, some in cyber, some in tech, some in literature. And I've got my own business, so I'm a business owner. I've got this platform which is just for women at the moment. It's called The Source. And that's, I do scholarships as well. I sit on some boards. We're going to speak about one of them today. And I've donated about 352 scholarships to women over the past 3 or so years. And that's about $500,000 the value of about $500,000.
That is pretty amazing. And that the cause that you do that for is so, I guess, foundational for what cybersecurity should be. And it's a far fetch from where we started. But I think we've come a long way in just a short period of time.
Yeah, we've got so much more work to do, though. I mean, it's you and I both know it. And there's so much more. It's amazing, but there's so much more work to do. And the world really needs us to do this work. So I'm big on the planet, talk a lot about it, although I do all this work for women. Really, it's about the planet. So I want a safer, happier, and more prosperous world. And the planet desperately needs us to do this work. So we become safer, happier, and more prosperous.
Totally agree. I remember coming back to the States after spending time in the UK and coming back to a country that I didn't even recognize. The whole pandemic and the chaos that broke out in the capital of the US, just it seems like the whole world is taking a societal downfall.
It absolutely, and it's cyclical as well. I've been reading about this. I'm reading one book at the moment, actually, which looks at all of this, especially in America, about 500 years worth of history, actually. And they look at the cycles that we go through. So, and how there can be this predictability, so we can have this regeneration and maintenance, and then death, so right now, certainly according to this particular book, we're in the winter season where we're kind of decaying and dying, and what typically happens, the pattern that typically happens is that we will go into war, and then everything is just built from the ground up. Things are sorted out. Those big problems that we have are sorted out. And what's also interesting, I think, about this time as well, I do a lot of work on this whole like women in and diversity and so on. But in times of peace, we have more division, which is ironic, and it's the polarity of things. And that's, I think, really where we are now. And I think particularly right now, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but particularly right now with the backlash towards the Me Too movement, and all of this toxic masculinity talk, what it means to be a man, like how can men, in our industry, how can they do well? How can all people do well? How can we thrive together? And how can people not be afraid? And one of the things that that's recently come out actually, and I was quoted in a journal very recently, literally just the other day, was to do with some of the work, because I'll do some research as well, some of the work on harassment, what has happened. And it's called on some bits of my work through the insecurity movement, which followed on from my book, and also conversations with other women about the situation. So yeah, I find it really interesting. I love doing research, and I love patterns and trends, and certainly in this industry, it's constant, isn't it? Whether we're looking at that or whether we're looking at attacks and threats.
Right. I mean, this whole industry is based on trends and things that we collaborate and correlate together. And I think that, looking at history, you talked about cycles. One documentary that I watched not too long ago really talked about empires and how empires are built in the life cycle of an empire. And they say that it has been throughout history about 254 years life cycle for an empire. And all of those empires that have built up over those 253 years normally implode on themselves.
Yes.
So it's normally an internal issue. And it seems like every country in the world right now, there's some sort of internal conflict in every country.
Yes, is that? Yeah, absolutely. Things are breaking down. Which actually is, I think it's kind of exciting.
Exciting
as well, but it's kind of, I think it's more exciting. It's just like great, excellent, that those horrible ways of working that were functional and served a purpose are now going, and there's a bit of a revolt. This is like basic evolution, isn't it? I mean, that's how I see it, and I do find it exciting. I also find it deeply worrying. As a mother of three, I say 3 kids, but they're young adults, so it's just like this is where they are in the world, and other young people. I work a lot with young people, and I love that work because they're largely untainted. They're not that we're broken, but we've gone through more of life, so there's the roller coaster of life, and some of those will have gone through a bit of a roller coaster already, but maybe not to the extent as some of us older folk. And yeah, so I think it's, when you stop and think about what is going on, it is deeply concerning. It really is deeply concerning at the moment.
That and all the health issues, and we just went through a pandemic. It just seems like the world is trying to cleanse itself. And one prediction I heard last year that I was really hoping would come true this year was we're on the precipice of an awakening of sorts, like a spiritual awakening. Absolutely. And to me, that's exciting because what we're in right now is not fun. And I would welcome that type of awakening for sure.
We're in the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
We've moved from the age of Pisces. So yeah, absolutely. And there's an awakening. There's more spirituality. Again, like interesting looking at, some of the trends in terms of Christianity and so on. But there's so much more spirituality. And that is great, and we need more of that because we need more love in the world. We need more compassion in the world, right. And then it just becomes a safer, happier, a better planet. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we both do a lot of work for and with kids, and some of the stuff that I really enjoy. They have such an honest view of the world and such an unjaded, unbiased view.
Yeah.
And when I was working with a production company, we did a short documentary for Euronews about kids and gaming. And it was so interesting to watch the compiled version after I did my little segment here in the US and listen to the kids talk about gaming and what it meant to them and how it felt for people to attack them and steal their stuff. But they have such an honest vision of themselves and the world around them. Some of them
do. Yeah. I mean, it's the kids bring so much joy, and it's so wonderful. I mean, I initially was talking about diversity, but it doesn't have to be just like gender or ethnicity. Right. It's age as well. Getting these young people to come into our industry and remain in it and contribute, and us listen to them, is just so exciting. I've done quite a bit of work with trainees and interns. I did that last year, like from 17, 18-year-old guys, to 20-something-year-old like women. It was incredible. It was so good. It was really great to have them come work with me.
Yeah, and they have such a genuine vision of what they're seeing in cybersecurity too, because they've never seen it before. There's no influence that's
Yeah.
making them think in a specific way. And we have an internship at the company I work for, and we have quite a few interns. And I've seen guys go from, guys and girls go from baristas at Starbucks to a level 3 SOC analyst or level
Yeah.
2 SOC analyst.
Yeah.
And to me, it's fulfilling for me because I get to watch it happen.
Yeah.
But it's really cool to see someone progress like that. And I think, it all kind of ties into our original topic of diversity, but like you said, it doesn't have to be male and female. It could be ethnicities. It could be, different things. It doesn't have to be just male and female. And I think a lot of people get so tuned into just that, and they pick a side, or they pick a
Yeah.
viewpoint. But what they're missing is the whole picture of diversity.
Well, this absolutely, and often diversity has come just to mean women.
Mhm.
It hasn't it? And so there's the perspective that we see things through is really important, and that's why the more specific you can be with your communication, your language, the better. And I know I work really, really hard. It's just like when I'm creating content or speaking at events, I really am very conscious of the words that I'm using. One, so I'm not offending, and two, also so I'm including as many people into the conversation as possible, so that we can grow and we can do better, because communication is not just about talking, it's about listening too.
I think the majority of communication is listening. I think that's where a lot of people fail. But the diversity and just, speaking and being on a public platform, I find myself having to like really focus on the words I say, not the meaning behind them, but just the way that they come out. I don't have probably the level of social etiquette that most people have, based on the fact that I was a huge introvert for such a long time. But I mentally have to take note and think about what I say before I say it, because there are so many sensitivities, and I understand I'm empathetic to it. But then there's also people who fight that diversity as well, who have loud voices and say things or cause issues where there aren't issues. And
Absolutely.
I think that plays into the whole cancel culture as well. And there's a lot of fear in public speakers about being canceled over something they've said, or having a conference and not bringing in a diverse group of speakers. And I've seen that happen in real time, and it's painful to watch.
It really is. I certainly, in my company, we say no blame, no shame, just better business. Exactly. It's just like, can we not be, there's a saying, you get what you tolerate. And I do agree with that. But also, I very, very much believe that, we have to not shame and not blame, and better educate. When we can bring people with us, rather than just go on the attack, which is what some of us do in this industry. The culture, can be attack, and bringing it down. And it's horrible. It really is toxic to be around, and I've had times, particularly last year, where I just thought, you know what, I can't stand this actually any longer. It just feels, so toxic. I just don't want to be around.
It's physically consuming. Like
it is. And the negativity and the animosity. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like the Matilda effect, I'm big, you're small, and the Roald Dahl book, and it's just like, I'm right, you're wrong. I was always saying this to my kids, I'm big, you're small, I'm right, I'm wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And it's kind of like that. It's this, some deep insecurity there, and it's an intolerance and people not able to listen or understand or see things from another perspective. There are better ways to communicate and bring people with us, rather than shaming and down on you and you're doing it wrong, or look at you and I'm so much better. And that I cannot abide. And I just want to remove myself from that energy. You were speaking about communication a few minutes ago. There's so much energy. That energy is toxic, and we really need, in my opinion, to do better with that, to be more welcoming, to be more understanding, to help people so much more than we are doing. We can do a better job of this.
Oh yeah. And one of the things that I keep telling myself over the years is I'm trying to leave the world in a better place than where I left it. And I think part of that is just being able to listen to people and communicate and learn people's stories, just so I know the path that they came down, and because that path makes them who they are. And when you talk about, the harassment, I think that you and I actually bonded over a harassment attack that I was going through, and some of the negativity that was flying around. And to be honest, like, it really is taxing because you can't help but look at it, but it's so hard not to play into the game.
Absolutely.
And the best lesson I learned in that whole process was, if you feed a monster food, they're going to grow bigger. So if you quit feeding them and you ignore their existence, they don't exist. And it's hard, but as adults, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be harassing people and putting people down, because the kids, we want to protect the kids, but how can we expect kids not to do it when we have full-grown adults doing it publicly?
Well, this is role models, effectively role models, and it comes from all types of people. I mean, I've been trolled. I've been allegedly physically assaulted, and I say allegedly because it's just my word against this person, even though I had my witnesses and he had his witnesses. They didn't match, so it has to be an alleged physical assault. Exactly. So we do have to be really careful. We have to be careful, and we have to be the role models.
Exactly.
we have to, and what I've seen sometimes online is I've seen really good people who are my friends, and I know them to be really good people, sometimes get caught up in that culture of I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm just going to squash you, and I'm going to call you names, and I'm going to be really unpleasant, and it's just really disappointing.
It is. And when people do that to me, when they harass me like that, I have to think to myself, okay, I must be doing something right if someone is spending that much time thinking about me or what I'm saying. So obviously I've triggered some sort of event in their mind. But the fact is, they're listening to what you're saying. And if we keep giving off positive messages like you do, then hopefully that thinking will change. I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that helps, but it's a struggle.
It's one drop in the ocean, isn't it? If we all the domino effect or the butterfly effect, whatever you want to use, but essentially I believe the same thing. It's just, I will not join. I can make a change. One person, I remember someone saying to me, I was delivering a talk at the EU actually, and he said to me something like, who are you to make a change in this? And and I kind of thought, I listened to him and thought, okay, I get what you're saying. I'm not a big company, or anything like that. And I'm sure if I was a great big brand name, we can think of all of them. I won't say any of them, but if I was a huge brand name and I put this bit of research out and I was talking about this, then a lot of people would take notice. But one person can make a huge difference. It didn't stop me. It didn't stop me. And then I think of people like, Greta Thunberg, with her climate action, and like, what a remarkable, like, incredible role model that she is, and how sad it is that she had to do that, felt compelled to do that from being a child, all the way through. But just the difference that she has made is incredible. Like, hats off. So anyone can make a difference, whether it's on that scale or whether it's simply by making a stand and doing the right thing.
I believe that wholeheartedly. And I think that even, to make a change, even to bring somebody back up from being bullied or harassed and be there for them and try to help them clean up the mess, that means more to that person than what you could probably understand, because that tells them that there's somebody there and are good people. But a lot of the time I see people getting harassed or bullied online, and then people scatter because they don't want to get wrapped up into it.
Well,
but at the same time, they feel bad for their friends. So I feel like somehow we need to lead by example, but also stop that when it starts happening.
well, this is it. And there are things that you can do. And I know I had that when I was being trolled. I mean, people were messaging me privately saying they wanted to help. Was I okay? They wanted to help, but they feared for their jobs. They feared for whatever reason, and they couldn't put themselves out there publicly. Or, I had one case where one person did through their company and their lawyer actually advised them not to, so yeah. Absolutely. So, and that's all fine. But equally, I think there needs to be a body of people there who can support and can do something to help that individual publicly. I mean, I did have people who would do that as well. I called cavalry. So there was a hashtag called cavalry. And a few of us agreed that if we were in trouble, you could just put the hashtag out there called cavalry, and we would all come in to support the person who was being trolled, and equally, if you are being trolled, by someone and they are representing a company, then you can always, and their behavior is intolerable and unacceptable, then you can always inform the company and take screenshots and things like that. I know I've done that. I did that once before, and I know other people have done that on my behalf. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, yeah, because that's actually doing the right thing, that behavior. And it doesn't mean to say that they have to lose their jobs. Right. It just means to say that they need to be taught that that type of behavior is not acceptable. That's not the way to go about it.
I explained to the CEO of that company as well, too, that this person was doing this action on company time, on company assets. So he's representing your company by doing this. Do you really want that type of image to be floating around?
This is that.
And that tune changed really quick.
Yeah.
But things like that, going through the right channels, trying to get bullying stopped is definitely, one way to go about it. But I think the way that you do it is much more precise and much more impactful. And that's by going around and speaking and being an advocate for people. And just recently, I saw you on videos from Black Hat. And I definitely want to dive into that, because I didn't really dive into the conversations that you had with them. I just saw that you were there, and I thought, how cool. Jane is actually covering Black Hat from the floor. So tell me about that experience and that process.
Yeah, so I sit on the board, the advisory board for Black Hat Executive Summit, so in Europe, and I've done that for a few years. So as part of that, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've partnered with them as well. So in addition to sorting out the event, I've partnered with them and got women to the event. So under a women's scholarship award, done that in the EU, I've done it in Saudi Arabia, and I've done it in Asia as well. And so there I was at Black Hat, going in, to really have a look around, to see what it was like, and to meet some of the scholarship winners. And it was great. It was really good. And I kind of do this in a ghetto way. So it's very, very ghetto. It's very not polished. It's like, here I am. I am a bit crazy. Like, the more authentic me is not necessarily, I can be so polished and everything like that, but I can also be completely crazy, ex-art student, here I am, let's just have some fun here and let's enjoy it. So it was just so great, because the scholarship winners that I met were just so they were on cloud 10, and they were just so full of happiness and joy and excitement, and so energized. And I was there just speaking to them. It's what do you think of Black Hat? This is your first time at Black Hat Europe. Some were new to the industry, so they'd made a transition and from a different career. And so I was hearing from them, what are your thoughts? How did you find it? As well as some really experienced, women, because I was talking to women on those videos, as to how they found it. So yeah, I mean, the feedback was it's great to be here. It's welcoming, for me as a woman, it's really welcoming. I didn't feel out of place at all. The talks were amazing. It was so good to connect with people again. So they were the bulk of them. So, and there was just so much excitement, so much energy and uplift. And when I've done the insecurity scholarships before, so these are people who can't afford to go, for whatever reason. And that's just so wonderful, because it just makes their few days. Many of them will say it's life-changing, and literally those are the words that they will use. This has been life-changing, and that's across all levels as well, not just entry level or mid-level, it's leader level as well. So this has been life-changing. And so it was great, because I've not always been able to be there. We've had COVID, for a couple of years, and then sometimes I'm off speaking at another event, so I've not been able to meet my scholarship winners and have a good look around. So this year it was great, even though I didn't have much time with them, but to actually meet them and see old friends. I mean, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, listening to great talks, but mostly for me, I'm a people person, so it's just like catching up with people you might not have seen for years, or maybe you've not even met them in person. So it's just like, oh my God, it's so amazing to meet you. It's like wonderful. Like, how are you doing? What's happening? Where are you working? Oh, you're still there, and like, what's going on? So yeah, it was really good.
I think the last Black Hat I went to in London was at the convention center. I can't remember which convention center it was, but it was a couple of years ago.
Islington.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. It was a really cool experience. The Black Hat briefings in Europe as opposed to the US is a little bit different. I like the environment and the feel and the vibe of the Black Hat Europe. And I've decided to start getting away from DEF CON and some of the other groups, some of the other conferences, strictly focusing on the more professional stuff. And that goes back to the whole trolling thing and some of the stuff that goes on at those conferences. I just want to avoid. Black Hat, I don't think I've ever seen any issues with Black Hat, even in the US. And I may be wrong. There may have been issues in the past, but I've never experienced it. And people I know haven't. So if someone wanted to help you give these scholarships to women for Black Hat next year, how would they go about giving you donations or providing support? How would they do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, they can come and speak to me. So they can just like find me on LinkedIn, Jane Frankland, all over social, just like with that handle. I keep it really simple. They can contact me via my website. So there's a contact form there, fill it in, tell me, what they want to speak to me about, and book a meeting. It's literally that simple, and then we can go through it. So yeah. And the other thing that they can help with is just by spreading the word. So which women do you know? Because it is an application process. Right. And I usually get hundreds of women applying, so it's just like spread the word, spread the word on it. And if there are people contributing to that, to helping with the numbers, then that's absolutely fantastic, because it just means that we can get more women, through and participating in the event.
Exactly. And so I run a nonprofit called Hackers for Vets, and we just gave away our first $10,000 award to a veteran in December. Actually, I think like a couple of days before Christmas. The reason why I say that is because I'd like to help you out next year. And maybe if you can get a couple of candidates that are females and veterans, I would absolutely love to help finance that.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Yeah, let's do it.
So sign me up. I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, yeah, cool. I will.
So along that same line, the whole women in cyber and where we are at as an industry, looking back to when I first got into security, before it was even really security, we didn't have many women. We didn't have many men that were under the age of 50. I mean, it was all bearded guys sitting behind a Linux console, and it was pretty much a sealed deal. Like, they had the keys of the kingdom, and they were not sharing them with anybody else, because that was job security. But I think as an industry, we've come a pretty far away from that. However, I have seen the negative things kind of amplified over time. And there's still, it feels like we make some progress, but then we get pushed back a couple steps by someone's actions, or someone respectable and doing something out of color, that makes us all stop and think about, wait a minute, I thought we were on the right path, maybe not. What is your overall feeling about where you saw the industry when you first got into it as opposed to now, and what do you think desperately needs the most change?
Yeah, so when I came in, it literally was, in fact, I didn't really realize there was a problem, with a lack of women until I think someone pointed it out to me, but it was so rare. I mean, literally to engage with a woman, was so rare. I do remember once having a female client, and it was just like, wow, that's really unusual. I mean, literally, it was so rare, but it was just normal. You were getting on with business, and you were just getting on with the job. And interestingly, so from a media perspective, they weren't big on it at all. They just wanted a spokesperson. So if that happened to be you, then that's absolutely fine. They just didn't make a song and a dance about it. So in some ways, there was more equity, in that respect, from a media perspective, spokesperson, visibility, than there is now. There's a bit more division or concentration or focus on it, which can divide and alienate and induce fear. But yeah, there were hardly any at all. It was so incredibly rare to meet another woman in the industry. Now it's much more common. There's more visibility, even though the numbers are low, and there are different percentages, so different reports on the percentages of women in the industry, depending on what area you're from. So in the UK, I think it's anywhere between 19% and 22%.
Still low.
It's still really low, but it's a solid report, and I do kind of believe those figures. And then obviously, if we look at the US, then you've got other reports there. It could be as high as 25%. So it really depends on your location. But now there are more women. We are more visible. And but there's still so much more work that needs to be done. And what particularly last year, I got really tired and frustrated. Frustration comes from commitment. I got really tired and frustrated of the lack of progress. So yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're not, we'll do it next year, or just the inactivity, or yeah, we're gonna do this, but we'll get a women speaker in to come speak to our community or company, or we'll set up a women's network. And it was just so frustrating that there was just such a lack of action and focus on it. And I do understand that there's enough to do, without this on top as well. But it's so important, and it needs to be woven in. It's a really important problem that we need to solve, because it just means that we can do better. It's not that women are better than men. It's just that when we have more diversity in all its forms in our companies, we innovate better. We don't consume, as many meetings. We stay on budget. All of these things. So we make better decisions, and it's just higher quality all round. And although there can be a rub at times because it can be difficult, we just do better work. So and that's what we need to do. We're being bombarded by attacks. Our adversaries are way ahead of us, so we do need to up our game, and that is one way that we can do that. So that's where I was last year, really tired, close to burnout, and like the top word of the year. I think that's just everyone's talking about burnout. So really, really close and really frustrated, and about the lack of real progress. It was almost like a tick box, like compliance. Right. We have best practice and we have compliance, don't we? And we want to tick all of the boxes. We want to be best practice and be able to tick the compliance box as well. And that's how I see it with this. It shouldn't be a compliance ticking exercise. It should be, we need to do it for all of these reasons, because we actually have a safer, happier, and more prosperous planet, and our planet needs us to do that right now.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that, you brought up a interesting point about burnout and people being frustrated with the lack of change and progress. So I started thinking about this not too long ago, during the pandemic, and looking at the way people were reacting psychologically and socially during and after the pandemic, and how their views of what went on around them changed. And I have to think that a lot of the stuff, the negativity that we see in the industry, it's not really industry specific, but these are people who are dealing with outside influences. And I think as a whole, especially as an American living in the US, looking at the state that our country's in, and the things that are going on, is depressing. And that tends to bleed over because we see that constantly. We're fed that through the media every day.
Yeah.
And so once you turn off the TV and go to work, you're still looking for that same, your mind is still looking for similarities or coincidences within your day to match up with what you're fed 24/7. So that psychology kind of blends in with your work and then everything else. And I think that the fact that you see it as a planet problem, I think, is a bigger picture. I think that's paramount, because if we look at it as a minutia, an industry problem or an industry attitude, we're missing the whole bigger opportunity, because it's not. It's a societal problem, I think.
It is. Absolutely, it is. Yeah. I mean, like, everywhere is struggling. Energy prices going up, inflation, climate change, politics. I think of the UK at the moment, it's in a really dire situation. I mean, last year we had three prime ministers. It's just like,
that was crazy
scandal. Like, yeah, absolutely. It was, really, really disruptive. And again, coming back to young people, I was talking to my kids, it's my eldest one in particular, he's just so depressed about the situation. How can he ever afford a home? He's got a good job, he's got a good salary, but getting on the property ladder, how can he be able to afford to have a family, and so on. So yeah, and there is, and also, like, when we're constantly, when we're around the media and what it feeds us, just as you said, I think that's where we need to come in and intervene and actually protect ourselves. So I know for me, I am completely limiting myself, and the spirituality plays into that as well, because that's where you're feeding yourself, like the goodness, that's your nutrition and your defense against the toxicity that is out there. What the media wants you to think about, the drama that it wants to get you involved in, for us to be more at peace and to raise our vibrations, so we really need to be protecting. We're more healthy, we're more happy and full of joy, when we are better protecting ourselves from these things, these external factors that are out there. And it doesn't mean to say that we don't have to go and look at the news and read the news and keep up to date, but we do have to protect ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's kind of, I try to limit myself on news, although my passion for geopolitics has kind of put me off the train rails for the past year with Russia and everything going on. But the negative news that I really hate to see, all this media coverage of the killings that went on at that college, and just all the negative stuff that since I've been an adult have been force fed. And when I remember when we were kids, like, we didn't have that problem. Like, it was rare you would see something like that on the news, but they spend hours. And once news went from 5 o'clock to the national news at 7, that was it. It went to 24-hour news feeds on Fox News. So now the kids are getting, like, flooded with nothing but negative information. And that vibration you're talking about, I think it's important for people to learn, what that is. Because when it comes to meditation and putting out into the world what you want to get back, I think knowing those principles are huge. And I think that things are probably going to get worse before they get better. Before the awakening, I think that things are going to get distraught, and it's going to be a struggle like we've never seen before. But I think the endpoints can be amazing.
We'll rebuild, where things are crumbling, things are changing, whether we go into a war or whatever. But things need to, it's a cycle, isn't it? It's just the life and death cycle. It's just that everything has a time, but things are, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. And so that's why tools like meditation and mindfulness,
Yes.
are so necessary. Spirituality as well, it's all of that is so needed right now, so that we can better protect ourselves, and so that we are more resilient, and so we can contribute, rather than being pulled down with this toxicity, or being pulled into the drama and then becoming, really ill, or being divided and agitated and defensive. It's not, it doesn't make you feel good. I'm sure no one in that state feels good. So better ways of being are really important for us to learn.
Absolutely. And I try to surround myself with people like that too. Richard Time, I had the opportunity and the honor of interviewing him on the podcast, and talk about spirituality, talk about someone who's come from the roots and the foundation of what spirituality is into our world of cybersecurity. It was such a refreshing conversation to hear it come from a man that used to be of the cloth,
Yes. Wow. I'm going to have to check him out. I don't know about him, but yeah, that's amazing. It's, it's so good. It's exciting when things like that happen again. Was he a clergyman?
Yeah, he was a clergyman, and actually, I believe in the UK. His name is Richard Time, and it's spelled Thieme. And he writes novels. One being Mobius, a memoir, but he's been a speaker at DEF CON for over 20 years.
Oh wow,
and he's the nicest gentleman I've ever met in my entire life, and great to talk to.
Wow, I'm going to check him out. I really like that. I really love that.
I think you'd like him. Maybe, introduce yourself and start a conversation. He's a great guy.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much for that.
Cool. Absolutely. Well, we've come to the end of our hour, and it was an honor to have you on again, Jane. It made my day, to be honest with you.
Oh, thanks. It was so good talking to you and talking about these topics, really important. It was just really nice to do that. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Anytime, Jane. Just give me a note and say you want to jump back on. It's yours.
Amazing. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Well, have a good day, and I'll let you get back to your everyday life, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you for coming again, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.